So what kind of leadership do we need right now? The answer to this question is that we need to start with where we are right now by paying attention to the kinds of questions that our own people are asking. Here are some of the questions we're hearing from people in congregations. Questions like, as we come back, what is it that's going to connect us? We thought we knew, but we're not sure anymore. What's happening to people now in the pandemic? Others are asking, how deep do our roots go? And what kind of roots do we need? What is it that we need to hold on to as we move forward? And what is it we need to let go of as we move forward? What new experiences do we want to incorporate into our life together as a church as we think of next steps? Who's coming back? Who isn't? What do we do about that? How are we going to grow? How are we going to get people to join us? And then underneath all of that, this question of, where is God right now in all of this? How do we discern and know what God is doing? So loads of questions such as this. What struck us is that all these questions fall under three critical themes. Number one, identity. Who are we? And who are we going to be in the months ahead? Who are we being called to be? And what are we being called to do? And where is God in all of this? Identity. The second theme that's emerged for us is community. What roots us? What does it mean to belong? Where are we connected? So the third theme is how we make decisions together. How do we talk together about the kind of directions that we need to be taking? And how will we collectively discern and make decisions moving forward? Now let's relate that to the question that many clergy and many leaders are asking right now. What kind of leadership do we need moving forward? The response is we need to be leaders who are assisting our people address the questions of identity, community, and decision-making. Well, one of the important ways of doing that is to recognize the defaults around which we operate a great deal. We as leaders actually feel responsible. We feel like we ought to have the answers. We ought to be able to come up with the solutions to address these questions. These are the built-in default responses that we have. And what we want to say is that these default ways of engaging are not going to help us address the question of the kind of leadership that we need going forward. And so I want to talk about another way. I want to invite you to see a different way of leading and addressing the challenges that we named through a series of steps. Part of this other way is about the posture that we begin with as leaders. It's the postures of trust and hope and confidence. Trust and hope and confidence that in the midst of all these questions and disruptions, which are very real, God is at work. Not in some generalized way, not in some hopeful, naive way, but God is on the ground in your congregation and your community and amongst your people, and the Spirit is gestating life and future amongst your people. That's the kind of hope and trust and confidence that we bring as we begin to lead in a different way. Leadership is about inviting our people to see that God is at work and God is present. The second is that out of that posture of trust and confidence, we become attentive to our people. Rather than bringing the solutions and the answers and the processes, we become people leaders who are paying attention to what's happening amongst our people. And the place to do that is listening to the stories that our people are telling. Now, most of the time, our people and the people in our community don't believe that their stories are worth much. But what we want to say to you is God's future, God's imagination, the Spirit's working inside the stories of our people. Inside that becoming attentive, we act in a certain kind of way. Rather than being an entrepreneur that says, here's what you now need to do, here are the answers to our questions, we become midwives. How do we call forth in those stories an imagination for what God is doing? That's the new kind of leadership that we need. And out of that being attentive to our people, we invite them, this is part of the midwifing, into a third piece, which is giving them permission to test and experiment. And in that testing and experimenting, to discover what God is doing. Finally, running through all of this in all of our leadership, we become people who are celebrating. We are celebrating the presence of God. We are celebrating that in the stories of people. We're celebrating it in the ways they're testing and experimenting. We're celebrating it in our worship life and in our liturgies, in our times amongst Scripture. These are the ways we enter into a new way of leading, and we begin to see a way of moving forward as we move into the fall. That's what leadership is about.